Well, if you've been plodding through Judges, oh gosh, it's wild, isn't it? Blinking heck. So far, we've read about a guy pooping his pants. Last week, we met a woman driving a tent peg through a guy's head. Who knows what's going to happen today? My gosh. Now, remember what we noted last time. Judges was written something like 3,000 years ago. But as Chris was saying earlier, yeah, look at today. And there's so much of what we see unfolding in Judges happening in our world even today. But historically, just to put it in context, it's that in-between time. Remember, Joshua has died and Israel is yet to have a king. So this is the intervening period. And as we saw last week, it is a lawless time. It is essentially the Wild West. And it's a very dangerous time, as you've seen reading through the book. And making it worse, of course, the Israelites kept diving deeper and deeper into rebellion from God and into sin. And there's that ever-repeating cyclical pattern of behavior, isn't there, throughout the book? The people drift away from God. God allows them to be punished, allows them to be conquered. And then when they repent, God raises up a judge to lead them back to himself and bring freedom from their enemies. But it's a cycle that just keeps on repeating again and again and again. So much so, as Gareth referenced in his prayer, even at the end of the book, you've got this verse. In those days, Israel had no king. All the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes. Well, welcome to 2026. That's the reality. So we can identify with much of what's going on. This morning, we're going to focus on the last judge, Samson. Judges 13 through 16. Now, if you've got a Bible app, or you can take one of the Pew Bibles, why don't you just open it up to this as we're going to go through it together this morning. Judges 13 through 16. Samson reminded me of, I was thinking about the Wild West and stuff, and Judges being the Wild West. He's a bit of the Billy the Kid. Remember Billy the Kid? Oh, Billy the Kid. He was one of my heroes. Billy the Kid, perhaps the most popular outlaw. In case you're unfamiliar with him, let's just watch this. Oh, dear me. But I can remember in the cinema watching Billy the Kid and all the other outlaws and stuff. Here's what I find fascinating about Billy the Kid, okay? Folklore and Hollywood treat him as a hero. And, Bon Jovi, the great Bon Jovi, what a star he is. He even had a whole album, brilliant album, if you've never heard it, all about him. Now, as I said, I loved the old westerns, and I loved Billy the Kid as the star. I hated the lawmen who were chasing him, the regulators. But the reality is, he is no hero. He is a very, very bad man. And we need to remember that. He's bent on revenge, and he's ultimately taken down by somebody that he thought was his friend, Pat Garrett, who you heard about in the film. All of which brings me to Samson. You were wondering where I was going, weren't you? Is it just me? But in Sunday school, Samson was presented as a hero. He really was. The guy with long hair, made a few mistakes, betrayed by the love of his life, and in the end turns back to God, dies wiping out the enemy. Yeah? Sounds like a real heroic story. That's it, isn't it? Except the child-friendly hero story isn't quite like that, as you may have discovered reading through Judges. Let's explore this a bit further this morning. Let's pick things up in Judges 13. Again, the Israelites did evil in the Lord. Here it is, the cyclical thing. Did evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord handed them over to the Philistines, who oppressed them for 40 years. In those days, a man named Manoah from the tribe of Dan lived in the town of Zorah. That's near Clydach. His wife was unable to become pregnant. They had no children. Okay. Now, straight away, do you notice what's missing in what's happening here? Each of the previous times when the Israelites did evil, they eventually came to their senses. Remember the story of the prodigal son? You know, he eventually comes to his senses, doesn't he? Because life is tough. And that's what you find with the Israelites. You know, they're off doing their own thing, but life gets difficult. And eventually they come to their senses and they cry out to God. No. This time, after 40 years of being conquered, they have moved so far away from God, they will not turn back to him. Gives you a hint where the story's going. So you pick things up a bit later on. The angel of the Lord appeared to Manoah's wife and said, even though you've been unable to have children, you'll soon become pregnant and give birth to a son. So be careful. You must not drink wine or any other alcoholic drink, nor eat any forbidden food. Women who've been pregnant can all identify with this, isn't it? You'll become pregnant and give birth to a son, and his hair must never be cut, for you'll be dedicated to God as a Nazarite from birth. You will begin to rescue Israel from the Philistines. Now, right away, it's important we note this. Even with no cry for help from the people to God, God still decided to rescue his people. More about that later. But suffice to say, a cursory reading of Samson's origins story would lead the reader to believe that he's going to be the hero. He's going to be a Nazarite, for goodness sake. It sets the stage for us to presume that he is the real deal. He's really important. It's important that we understand what a Nazarite was. Nazarite, basically, that was about a vow to commit one's life to God's service, to be an important agent of God, to be set apart in a special way. This is a massive deal that he's going to be a Nazarite. If you're unfamiliar with the rest of the Old Testament, it's something that goes back to the book of Numbers. It's there in their history and in their tradition. If you cycle back through Numbers 5 and 6, God tells the Israelites to do the opposite of what Adam and Eve did when they sinned, blaming each other. And instead they were to confess their sins and make restitution for any harm they've done to one another. So you remember, for instance, in Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve's hidden sin perpetuates, it escalates with their children, but confession and restitution stop the cycle of sin before it can continue. And then that introduces us to a set of 4 laws, reminding us of the unfolding melody that you see running through the Old Testament. 1, death. 2, exiled outside the Garden of Eden. 3, Israel being called to live righteously, because, unlike Adam and Eve, they'd failed. So Israel has been called to live a better way. And then 4th, the reality that only a faithful, holy Israel will come through the flood waters unscathed, to continue being fruitful and multiply. And the section concludes with instructions in number 6 that if men or women want to make themselves set apart for God, to live for God, to break the cycle of sin, to really stand out, and what they should do is they should make a Nazir vow. Nazir simply means to be set apart. To be set apart as holy, as different, as radically different for the Lord. And the first thing the Nazarites are to do is that they're to abstain from alcohol. Probably a throwback to Noah. Do you remember what happened to Noah after his drunken debauchery after the flood? Led him to sin with his family. It may connect to Nadab and Abihu, who drunkenly desecrated God's holy space. And we can see here, part of it is, you abstain from alcohol, but part of it as well is that you don't cut your hair. Some scholars suggest that's maybe kind of to create a picture of what it was like before Adam and Eve sinned, when they were in the garden with their long locks, like you see in those lovely children's books. There were no Aussie barbers in the Garden of Eden. All right, there were no hairdressers going around visiting homes. They had long, long hair, unless you're like me. So you get the picture. You want to be set apart for God. If you want to be serious about your faith, I want to say this to Moriah Baptist Church today. If you want to be serious about your faith, abstain from alcohol and grow your hair. That's interesting, isn't it? The Nazarite vow stuff remained a very popular thing It was always seen as a sign and a kind of symbol of purification and holiness. You may have seen this in the New Testament. Do you remember Paul and that whole incident with him cutting his hair and stuff? Acts 18. Paul stays on in Corinth for some time. He left the brothers and sisters, sailed for Syria, accompanied by Priscilla and Aquila. Before he said he had his hair cut off at Cenchrea because of a vow he had taken. Many scholars suggest that that was a Nazirite vow. It also seems to be implied later on in Acts 21, where Paul and 4 other men who go with him and they purify themselves. Take these men, join in their purification rites, pay their expenses. They can have their heads shaved. The next day, Paul took them and purified himself along with them. Is that what we've got in Acts 18? Maybe Paul was ending a Nazirite vow. We know it had to last at least 30 days. That's how long you had to do it for, at least. In Acts 21, might he and these other guys have taken a Nazirite vow and be ending it? You know, we all get to stages in our lives, if you're a Christian, where you kind of come to the realization that it's not been going very well. And you come and you resolve, don't you? I'm going to be serious with God now. I'm going to take this serious. So I'm going to do something. Well, you might not abstain from alcohol, and you might not decide not to cut your hair, but what might you do? You may give up chocolate for Lent. You may commit to scripture memory. You may say that I'm going to be more faithful in coming to church. All of these, similarly, are ways of us saying, oh, I want to be serious with God. I want to be set apart. The way things have been isn't right. So, enter Samson. Samson, dedicated to the Lord. He's going to be a Nazirite. He's going to be set apart. He's going to be Holy Joe. He's going to be the model disciple. Yeah, good luck with that. The story's off kilter almost as soon as it's begun. Did you read during the week Samson's father? I mean, he didn't believe his wife at all. Chapter 13 plays out a lot of that drama, but then you've got chapters 14 and 15. That's where the drama really starts to ramp up. So, let me just give you the highlights, or should I maybe say the lowlights of what happens. Judges 14 and 15. Samson saw the Philistine named Timnah and ordered his parents, get her for me. That's what he does. It's there in the text. Get her for me. She looks good to me. Whoa. Imagine if I went up to your dad and said that 36 years ago. My word. Samson rips a lion's jaw apart with his bare hands. He loses a bet and he kills 30 guys out of revenge. He calls his soon-to-be wife a heifer. Now, I had to check this with Sarah because heifer in Spanish means boss. So in Spain, I call her a heifer. I do, seriously. She's the boss. But no, not a boss here, Blinker. That's derogatory. He accuses her and the men of being unfaithful. He jilts her at the altar. Do you remember that? Blinking heck. When he found out that Timnah's father let her marry someone else, what does he do? He tied torches, not battery Duracell torches, no, torches that are flaming with flames, to 300 foxes and burns down the Philistine grain field. Why? For revenge. When the Philistines put Timnah and her father to death because of it, Samson what? Killed many of them. The Philistines were outraged and prepared to attack the Israelites. The Israelites handed over Samson to them, but it was a trap. Samson breaks free. He kills 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. And then Samson spends the night with a prostitute. Playing, hey, hero. Want to be like him? Some hero. You quickly get the sense, don't you, that this guy's no hero at all. All Samson cares about is himself. And revenge. he breaks all those Nazarite vows that we've just been talking about over and over and over again. And then, Delilah. Well, you had to put it in, didn't I? Dear me. Enter Delilah. Blinking heck. Now it's going to get interesting. Wow. Here we are, Delilah. Do you know, by the way, I really struggled to find any art that didn't have her topless. Maybe the painters understood something, but there we are. Judges 16. Sometime later, Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah, who lived in the valley of Sorek. The rulers of the Philistines went down to her and said, entice Samson to tell you what makes him so strong and how he can be overpowered and tied up securely. That each of us will give you 1,100 pieces. Why 1,100? 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me what makes you so strong and what it would be to tie you up securely. Well, that's how she would have said it, isn't it? Then begins this strange game of cat and mouse. Some like to vilify Delilah, but if we're honest, she and Samson had very, very selfish motives. I was told in Sunday school, this is a love story. Pfft, is it heck? Delilah was loyal to her people. She wanted the money. Samson already had a pattern of using one woman after another. In his eyes, I mean, talk about misogyny. We were talking about that the other week, weren't we? This guy, he just treats women as objects for him to have, not as people who are his equals. Well, over the following verses, as he continues to sleep with her, she presses him about the secret of his strength. He lies to her again and again. She tries all sorts of ways to trap him, only for him to escape when the Philistines turn up. So, what happens? Well, what happens is interesting, isn't it? I love the way the NLT has translated it. Then Delilah pouted. Oh, she had a sulk. You can imagine her, can't you, sitting with him, looking into his eyes. How can you tell me you love me when you don't share your secrets with me? You can hear it playing out, can't you? You've made fun of me 3 times. Oh. You still haven't told me what makes you so strong. She tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick to death of it. Finally, Samson, you can imagine him, can't you? Finally, Samson shared his secret with her. My hair has never been cut, he confessed, for I was dedicated to God as a Nazarite. It's going well for him, isn't it? As a Nazarite from birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me and I would become as weak as anyone else. Billy the Kid was killed by Pat Garrett. This photo is from 1880. I thought it was a joke because I thought it was to do with Red Nose Day, but that's the way the photo has survived. Billy the Kid is the second from the left. Pat Garrett is the one farthest on the right. Now, we know from what we saw in the Smithsonian clip there as well, and from history books, that they were friends. They were friends. They had nicknames for each other. Garrett was known as Big Casino. Billy the Kid was known as Little Casino. Old West BFFs. Oh, yes, everything was fine. But then you remember what happened. Garrett was elected sheriff, and he went after his friend. I wonder whether his friendship played into him being able to finally beat Billy the Kid. Track him down. Back to Samson and Delilah. Delilah's dalliance, friendship, connection with Samson? I think that played into trapping him, didn't it? What happens next is no real surprise. Fast asleep in her lap, his head is shaved. The Philistines come, they capture him, they gouge out his eyes, and they put him in prison. Do you know what I've always thought? Why the heck did he tell her? Why the heck did he tell her? Daft apeth. Well, he was. He tells her what the real secret is, so she goes for it. Of course she does. She's tried everything else he's ever told her. I don't think he believed she cared for him. I mean, he told her a pack of lies several times, and she would try out what he'd said. Do you know what I think? I think he became a bit cocky. That's what I think happened. He'd escaped danger so many times, had his strength come back to him, and I don't know, it's almost like a boxer. You know, I love boxing. But sometimes you say to a boxer, stop, that's it now. But they want to have one more fight. And it's almost as if Samson is at that stage of, yeah, one more time. Because he's a bit cocky. He's a bit overconfident. He's so selfish. It would never occur to him that he's going to fall. Well, we know what happens, of course. Time goes by, his hair begins to grow back, and then they have a massive party at the Philistine temple, 3,000 people attending. He's brought out as the night's entertainment. Oh, yeah. Chained between two pillars supporting the temple. Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me again. Oh God, please strengthen me just one more time. With one blow, let me pay back the Philistines for the loss of my 2 eyes. Samson put his hands on the 2 center pillars that held up the temple. Pushing against them with both hands, he prayed, let me die with the Philistines. And the temple crashed down on the Philistine rulers and all the people. So he killed more people when he died than he had during his entire lifetime. And that's it, isn't it? That's the picture. I posed for that. Tim took that picture of me a couple of days ago, wasn't it? That's... When you came to church, that's the Samson in your mind, isn't it? That's the guy we remember. That's the hero. There he is, pushing the pillars down. In his final moments, he prayed to God and defeated the Philistines. But was he the hero? It's interesting, isn't it? As a judge, God had given him strength to lead the people back to God, bring freedom from the Philistines. Did he do either of those things? The story ends with the Israelites still enslaved to the Philistines. Saving Israel was never Samson's goal. And if you want proof of it, it's there in the passage. Look at what he prayed. He prayed, let me pay back the Philistines for the loss of my 2 eyes. Nothing about getting the people back to God or anything like that. This is about revenge. This is a totally self-possessed guy. His motivation is utterly selfish. He cares only about himself, even at the end. And he ignored the opportunity to serve God, and nothing changed for the people. Samson is Israel's last judge. The remaining few chapters of Judges just record things getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Israel's Wild West is a dark period of history. It gets darker. It's a blinking depressing book, isn't it? So what can we learn as we finish this morning? I think there are a few things for us to really take note of in the example of Samson and how things played out for him. I think the first thing is this: apathy is deadly. Apathy is deadly. The dictionary defines apathy as a lack of feeling or emotion, a lack of interest or concern. Samson and the Israelites, remember, didn't care tuppence about God. That's where they'd gotten to. 40 years. They didn't care. Remember at the beginning I pointed out the Israelites didn't ask God for help. They didn't seem to want to be delivered. And Samson, he had incredible potential, but he didn't seem to care either, did he? Maybe they just thought, oh, we'll get around to it eventually. But for now, just wanted to enjoy how things were. Have a good time. Maybe they don't think it's important or urgent. Not a problem unique to them, is it? We do it today. We put off doing the right thing. We'll get around to praying, get around to reading the Bible, get around to going to church a bit more, get around to witnessing to our friends. We say, oh, God's really important to me. Yeah, but our actions don't back it up. We reveal that we don't really have an interest in or a concern for God. And just as that indifference led to horrible consequences back then, it can have serious ramifications for us. Apathy is deadly. Second thing we see here is that selfishness is deadly. See that quite clearly, don't we? Samson was the epitome of selfishness, whether it was with women, things he wanted, his own safety, his desire for revenge. Even in his own death, as we've seen, his focus was on himself, not saving the people. Well, of course, he didn't save the people. Samson is an extreme story, I get that. But it does give us a warning, doesn't it? Selfishness is a trap. And we may justify it as, well, got to look after myself, Mark. Nobody else will do it. But really, it's putting what I want ahead of others. It's the polar opposite of what Jesus calls his followers to be like. And this is a big one, isn't it, in today's society? Because we are incredibly individualistic and selfish in our society. And we can fall into this trap so easy. And so we must take note. Selfishness is a problem. Jesus calls us out on it. It's something Paul picks up on in Philippians chapter 2. Don't be selfish, he says. Don't try to impress others. Be humble. Think of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. We are here to put others first. I'm sure you can all think of somebody who lives like that. They're incredible people to be around. I have a number of friends who are like that. And I have to say, I was thinking this past week, what would the world be like if I lived more like that? And if all of us lived like that? Not trying to impress others, not pushing ourselves to the fore, but rather being humble, putting everybody else first. It sounds very Christ-like all of a sudden, doesn't it? Because being like Jesus is being the opposite of selfish. The final thing I think we need to note, apathy is deadly. We see that. Selfishness is deadly. But the third and key theme, really, that we see in the story of Samson is this. God is faithful. Amen? God is faithful. As horrible as things get in Judges, we're reminded that God is faithful. That's the message now that's going to unfold throughout the Old Testament and into the New. Hebrews 10 puts it beautifully. Let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm, for God can be trusted to keep his promises. That's what's truly incredible in Samson's story, isn't it? Even though the people didn't ask for help, God was still faithful to them. They broke their promises, but God kept his. Because this in Judges isn't the end of the story. It's not the end of the story for the whole of humanity. It's not the end of God's story. Because the glorious thing is, just as God intervened back then, we trace through the Bible and the whole of human history a God who continues to work, who continues to bring deliverance and forgiveness and peace and reconciliation supremely through his Son. So that's why we started our service with that beautiful song. Because all my life, he's been faithful. God has promised to save you. Nothing will stop him. You can't blow it too big. You can't fall too far. He will keep his promise. That's what we learn through Samson and this amazing little section of the book of Judges.